Hey guys, good morning. We want to talk today about epoxy floors and what can go wrong. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and the issue is it's not like you're painting a wall or you're painting somebody's trim outside where if something fails or peels off is a failure, is a very inexpensive fix. If I paint somebody's trim around the window and it pops off, it's our fault. To go back and fix that is, a $40 can of paint and an hour or two to fix it. For an epoxy floor, you're looking at very expensive projects. You're looking at very expensive products. And the issue is sometimes you can't just go back in and recoat them. There are recoat times for most industrial epoxies. Sometimes they're 24 hours, sometimes they're 72 hours, sometimes longer. But so that means that a month or two down the road, if you didn't do that floor correctly and you have to go back and recoat it, guess what? You either need to prepare that floor again by grinding mechanically or getting the gloss off of the floor. So you can do that mechanically with a grinder. You can use a floor buffer with heavier pads on it, but you cannot just go back on top of a floor. So now you have all that extra work of grinding the floor and now your product again. You can imagine if you do a warehouse that's 15,000 square feet and it cost you originally, $3 a square foot, that's $45,000. I'm getting the calculator out. That's $45,000. That's great. You probably made some decent money the first time. Now you have to go back, buy all new product because it's not their fault as long as you warranted the floor and it was really your fault. It was a coating failure. So even if you have to spend another $15,000 in material plus the labor, now it's costing you money to go back and do the floor. So epoxy floors are not for the weak. They're not for the brand new painter. They're not for people who haven't done epoxy floors. Epoxy floors are separate of the painting industry. It's not the same type of people that you want coming to do your epoxy floor that are also painting your walls. This is a hard lesson for some people. And, you see, I want my garage floor painted and I want my garage floor epoxied, and you have 3 bids come in, and you'll know right away if they're a legitimate epoxy floor company, it's not going to be inexpensive. It's not going to be astronomical. But if you have another company come in who's a painting contractor and they think they're going to put this lower level of epoxy on that they picked up from the local Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore store or Home Depot, it's a different level. We may get products from those places, but they're not products that are just simply out on the shelf. Actually, the products we get from Sherwin-Williams don't even come from the same sales rep. We have to go to a completely different rep. They will not give you the products unless you've been trained on them. And that's the important part. Have you been trained on them? So you're looking at a picture right now. I'm going to put a video up of a floor that we went back and looked at. It was done 3 years ago, not by us, by another contractor. For this facility is a puppy daycare. So as you can see with the floor, they've had failures across the floor in various spots. They were told that there was an issue with the concrete. There was movement, there was this and that. On my initial inspection on the estimate, I could see right away the floor was not prepared correctly. And the reason I can see that is I can touch it. So I pulled up the floor, which is very easy, touched the floor underneath, smooth, very smooth, which is bad. You don't want a smooth floor when you're about to put down an expensive epoxy product because it's not going to adhere. I also noticed there was a lot of dirt underneath the floor. And also up underneath the floor, in some areas, it was a different color. So we had to estimate it to remove that whole coating. We had to remove the whole coating. She had to do her whole floor again 3 years later. And at about 5,000 or 6,000 square feet, you know that this is not an inexpensive project. But as she was very attentive to her facility, and it's very important to her and her clients that she wants the best. So we did it. We did it last weekend. As you can see, the guys ripping up the floor, they're able to actually rip the floor up by their hands. One thing we did notice when you lifted it up, there was a lot of dirt underneath, a lot of dust, a lot of dirt. This means that the floor wasn't cleaned properly. I mean, dirt's not going to magically get underneath the epoxy coating, so it was under there. Again, my suspicions were correct that the floor was not prepared correctly. And this was a painting contractor. This was not a floor contractor. My third issue was they used the wrong product. They used a product that we would traditionally use, where you may get some foot traffic. It's not going to have any chemicals on it. So dogs, obviously, you're going to do what dogs do. They're going to pee on the floor. Pee is acidic. Urine's acidic. It's going to eat through the coating. So that didn't happen yet. You could see it lost a little bit of the shine. But what we wanted to do was come in with a more industrial grade product. And that's what we did. So we removed the coating. We had sporadic failures throughout the floor where we could rip the floor up by hand. Other areas were able to grind right off, no problem. And then some other areas were adhered. So there was a little fluctuation of prep across the whole floor. This is a hard lesson to learn because she could have probably held them liable for the floor, for the failure. But, you know, by the time you do all that, you go to court, you sue somebody and you win. The chances of you getting the money anyway are slim to none. So she bit the bullet and paid us to do the floor. We did the floor. You can see the final pictures here. Came in, we grinded the floor. After it was grinded, we cleaned it again. You want to make sure that you're not contaminating the floor by walking back on the areas you've already prepared, and you don't have other people in the facility walking on the floors that you prepared, because otherwise you're bringing contaminants back on the floor, and that includes sneakers. The rubber on the sneakers can add a little bit of contamination to the floor, so we want to eliminate and limit the amount of foot traffic on that floor. We came in, we used 100% solid epoxy from Sherwin-Williams, from General Polymers from Sherwin-Williams, with a partial sparse flake. The flake is going to add some anti-skid, anti-slip for the dogs. And also, it's going to hide a lot of the dirt, so it's going to make it easier for them to clean. On top of that, we came back in with a polyaspartic top coat, which is, you know, the best top coat that we can give them. It's going to be UV resistant. It's going to be resistant to any sun coming through. We're not going to fade out. We're not going to lose our sheen, and we're not going to lose our color. On top of that, this floor can withstand almost anything now. They're going to be able to clean this floor. The dogs hopefully are going to love it. We're going to make sure we go back and get some video of the dogs on the floor. And that's it. So, you know, guys, don't jump into the epoxy floor business without knowing what you're doing. We've limited it to now only 4 people will touch our floors. And 2 of them only think about floors. That's all they think about. Kyle does the floors, and he obsesses about these floors. If you want somebody who's very meticulous about a floor, he's your guy to do the floor. He will touch every floor that we do. It's just, that's how you have to be with floors. You cannot take them lightly. It's not worth it. It's not worth jumping in when you don't know what you're doing. Get the training, get the knowledge, go online, talk to other contractors who just do floors, and you'll be all right.